Welcome to another episode of the Ultraspeaking podcast. Today's guest, I'm super stoked on, not because he's an ex-engineer at Microsoft or at SpaceX, but because now he has a career of roasting people who work at Microsoft and SpaceX and all these other tech companies. The one and only Jesse Warren has taught improv at Ultraspeaking. He does stand-up, from what I hear, 5 to 6 nights a week, which is insane. And in my opinion, one of the funniest people on the planet, but also one of the greatest teachers when it comes to comedy. He's got a cohort-based course on the structure of jokes, on being funny, on adding more humor. And today we're going to explore all these topics around probably what's one of the most important things in speaking, which is, your sense of humor, your ability to express that side of you. So I'm super stoked on this conversation. You can find Jesse with millions of views on YouTube. He's a regular on The Cut. He's basically a pretty big deal. But today I want to go deeper, and I want to get to know the human being. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jesse Warren.
That was like such a stressful intro for me. I was noticing how I felt so flattered and grateful for the nice stuff you were saying, but simultaneously the more stuff you piled on, my body was actually it was inducing anxiety in me. You know,
perfect. It's because that's the state. That's the state that's so relatable to all of us is that pressure, the pressure to deliver in front of people. I'm excited to have you here, specifically because I've seen you run a few improv classes. You run a course for Ultraspeaking, and you also did a team building event for the leadership team at Ultra, which is really cool. So I think improv is one of those things that everybody is really curious about. So I want to start there. Mm-hmm. And actually, what did you notice? You've taught improv at Ultraspeaking, and everyone who did that class did the fundamentals course. So they learned a related skill around speaking that has nothing to do with improv. But was there anything that you noticed in teaching improv at Ultraspeaking that's maybe a little bit different than maybe other students you've had?
Totally. Yeah. I think I said this in the classes because it was always pretty shocking how eager to just jump into stuff that they were. They had already gotten over this thing that usually takes a few weeks to get over, which is the willingness to fail and just dive right in to a pretty difficult, or not difficult, but very uncomfortable exercise. And I really like that. I think that if I could go back in time, I would have because I started by doing improv. I would have done some kind of improvisational speaking course without some kind of pressure of incorporating some comedic element into it, and then gradually increase the complexity, and then done an improv course, which is Ultraspeaking, but now with this increased complexity. And then I would have gone to stand up where there's even more of a specific thing you're trying to elicit.
Right. So, I want to get to stand up too, but you're talking about the pressure of just diving in, which I think is a big barrier for people with improv. And that doesn't really even have anything to do with this, almost the skills of improv, the niche skills. Right. That's just getting over the this is so uncomfortable. I don't even know if I want to be here right now.
Yes.
How can people develop in that area? How can they overcome that discomfort?
Dude, well, I can't advocate that you do what when I took my first improv class, dude, I showed up drunk to every class. Okay, yeah. I would chug 6 shots, chew a fuck ton of gum, and I would just be I was so uncomfortable. And I'm not even a drinking guy. I wasn't even back then. I just couldn't get myself to do it without it. And then I was still strategic about it. I would taper. So okay, so 6 shots is first class, 5 the next one. And then by the end of it, I did my last class.
This is what James Clear talks about in micro improvements on a daily basis.
Right. Dude, it's yeah. That's except that's not like what I would tell other people to do. I guess why wouldn't I tell somebody to do that? But that's what I did anyway. You don't need. I don't know. I was a young insecure man. Yeah,
Really?
I think Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's surprising, right? Because you strike people as a young, secure man now.
Really, dude, I'm so still. All I'm doing is like internally is just criticizing just being really insecure. Like I'm way more secure than I used to be, and I think like this some of the skills I've acquired help with that. But I think that this is like my resting default state.
Resting insecurity.
Yeah. Yeah, insecure and anxious.
What's the relationship of that with comedy? Is there a place for anxiousness and insecurity in being funny?
I've been thinking about this recently, and I haven't formulated like a cohesive philosophy on it. But I'll share with what I have so far, which is like comedy is like social tension management. That's one perspective. There are a bunch of different perspectives you can have on it. There are like 4 leading hypotheses in why people like laugh. One of them is around like tension, right? So like a joke is a buildup of tension and then a release of tension, right? So I'm super in tune with like tension in social contexts. Because I'm extra sensitive to it. Like I really feel it. So if you can recognize where tension is, that's the first step to releasing it. So what comedy has actually helped me a lot with is trying new stuff and being more secure about trying new stuff. Because if you are, the thing about failing at a new thing is like, for me, I feel embarrassed if I fail at it because there's this tension now, like you just failed. But there's a way to not be affected by that tension. And if that's failing gracefully, like utilizing that tension and then breaking it. So if you are good at comedy, you can actually try new things, fail, and use that tension to your advantage. So there's no real failure because if you do good, you do good. But if you fail, you do good. Right?
So the failure becomes the pivot, the focal pivot of the next opportunity for humor.
Yes. Yes. And that's something I've been thinking about recently. How like I still feel scared to try new things, but I really do just like do a lot of new things now. And if I fail at them, I'm really not that worried about looking embarrassed. I think yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're in a way able to laugh at yourself, in a way able to diffuse the discomfort of tension by applying the skill of comedy to it, by almost because I think the default is to try and hide it or try and not acknowledge it. Right.
But like the skill is like literally saying the thing that everybody is thinking, right? So if you fail and you try to like not address it, there's some tension there. But if you fucking say it, like that's crazy. Like it's so unusual to have somebody address exactly what everybody's thinking. That like almost sometimes you don't even have to use a joke. You can just say the thing. And then like people are like, oh, he's fine. He knows what's happening and he's fine. Cool. We can all relax again.
Talk to me about the courage of being funny. To me, it feels like every joke is putting yourself on the line and maybe saying something that has a risk to it. So how do you build that courage?
When I started doing stand-up, I wasn't like a funny person who was doing stand-up. So a lot of people like get into stand-up because they're funny and they're like looking for an outlet to be funny. I did stand-up because I wanted to learn how to be funny, right? So it's completely different motivation for me. So going into it, I knew I wasn't going to be good, and I wasn't good. And even relative to other people who were new at it, I was very bad. So because it wasn't part of my identity. But I really trust that if you practice something, I have enough data in the rest of my life to suggest that when I've been bad at something initially, like even particularly bad relative to other people who are new and bad, that if I keep doing it every day, that I'll get good, and I'll actually get good fairly fast. Like I'll see progress. And so I just really trusted that this isn't forever. And I've seen what the other end looks like. Like I have funny people in my life, and I've seen just how like useful that skill seems to be. So I just stayed fixated on that. And when you do something every day, which from the jump, I did it every day. Like
Wow. So you'd
every
go
day.
to open mics and test out.
Yeah, a couple times a night, often.
Wow.
And there was a time where I think I did like 200 days straight where I didn't take a single day off. And when you do something every day like that, you just you adapt or die, right? So it's like, you're people who like run. I know somebody who like runs like 10 miles a day, and like a lot of people are like, you're overtraining, your body can't recover. But like it'll either recover or it'll die. So my brain will either become this thing that's can handle that life, the feelings, all the ups and downs associated with it, or it will die because it's doing it every day. So yeah, that's what I did.
So 200 days of stand-up in a row at one point, just consistent, deliberate practice. And you started at a place of, I'm not funny. This is not part of my identity. I want to learn the skill of becoming funny and becoming good at stand-up. What did you notice over the 200 days? What changed for you?
Quicker than you might think, you start to become comfortable on stage. But what you think is comfort on stage, well, later you'll look back and you'll be like, I was so deeply uncomfortable. But that doesn't matter. All that matters is that, like, at least it's like tolerable. You're not like blacking out. Because when most people do stand up for the first time, I've like seen this happen a few times. Like most times they're like, I blacked out during that performance, and that will happen. That's normal the first few times you do it, but your body will adapt or die. So like if you keep doing it, you're not going to black out every time.
Yeah.
Your body will. You just don't have enough resources to get that like worked up every time. So your body will start treating it like it's just something that it does. Yeah. What was the question?
And what else? Yeah, it's like you're getting more comfortable, so you're building. Right. You're at least now able to like have your wits about you,
right?
But what about improving at the skill? What did you notice, or how did you evolve as a comedian?
Yeah. So one of the things that can happen early, because you start with no jokes. That's pretty crazy. Because even if after doing this for years, I did a 3-minute open mic set, and I'll do this, but like oftentimes you want to open with something you kind of know works, so you can just get the audience to trust you, and then that way you have this barometer for how the rest of the jokes hit. So how does it do relative to that one that I know does this good, or this
a baseline joke?
Yeah, but you have none of that going into it. So the first, first 200 days, like you said, I developed some lines that I knew worked, and you can kind of intersperse them throughout. And that gave me a new type of confidence, because you have something that has a high likelihood of working at some point. So worst case, you don't do a whole set to complete silence, which that idea is just so threatening.
Wow.
Yeah. But then sometimes you're like, these jokes work. And then you do like a bar show in front of 2 people and none of it works. And then you're like, well, like, what do I do now? But that's cool also, because you have to adapt or die. So like you try something. And some people will actually plow. I've seen this. They plow through the jokes that they think should work. But when I'm in that context, I will abandon jokes immediately and do anything else. I'll try to just be in the room, because when you're talking to two people, they don't want to hear a monologue. I think.
Yeah. That was my issue. I did stand up once, and I really struggled to find my voice. Like, I spent 6 weeks in a class testing out different like jokes, and I wasn't like a jokey person. I could only like really just speak and tell stories and try to intersperse humor. But because it was so pre-planned, I couldn't find my natural humor, because like the jokes were stale to me. You know, I had done them, and so the whole time I was watching like all the people in the class at the final performance. We're at like some bar, and they're all crushing it. They all seem to me like super into their element. And I just felt like I was an ultra speaker trying to give a speech at a comedy club. And it just like, it was not my jam.
Well, you did it, I mean, once, right? That's true. One data point, you know? I mean, that's why the attrition rate for stand-up is so high. I think it's like absurdly high. It's like 98% or something. But like that first experience, it like is really uncomfortable for people that they never want to do it again.
What would you recommend to most people if they had to go in one path? Is it improv or is it stand-up?
Depends what their goals are. So this is quite a point of contention among people in comedy. It's like stand-up versus improv. I'll tell you what, because I do both, and most people don't do both. They like pick a lane. But what I hold in my head is this hypothetical ideal that I will never reach. But I would like it to be such that when I'm like, I do stand up because when I'm writing jokes, hypothetically, I want to reach this point where the way I write is so natural, authentic, and conversational. And that's just the way that my writing is. Simultaneously, I want to attack it from the other end, where my improvisational speech is so concise and dense and laconic, as though I had spent a bunch of time writing it. So to me, I have to attack this from both
the
sides.
singularity.
And then and hopefully they coalesce into this thing, but I will never reach that thing. That thing is impossible. So that's how I frame my thinking around both of these art forms. And I look at them as tools. Like this has been kind of useful for me. Like, funny is not like a particularly big part of my identity. I actually never think about it, and I really hate I don't bring it up. I resented you while you were introducing me as like a particularly funny person, and the word that I get most of the time, it's the word that I get to describe me is intense, which is like that makes more sense to me. I was getting a tattoo. I got my first tattoo the other day.
Nice.
Yeah,
congrats.
It was cool. Thank you. And the tattoo artist was like, "Yeah, you seem like a what's that?
Lower back?
No, not lower back, dude. Ankle. I got to like start really like the incremental stuff. I've been putting this off mentally for so long. So I was like, what is the smallest thing I could do that will just get me to do this? So I got like a small tattoo on my ankle, lower back. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someday. I don't get. Yeah. I actually think that's kind of cool. That would be cool for like a dude to have like a traditional. I don't know. Maybe not.
You got to break stereotypes.
I haven't seen it,
but you got to work your way up the body.
Yes. But the tattoo artist said that I seem chill, and I was like, "What about me could possibly give you that impression?" Because I wasn't blink. Like, look at my eyes, dude. I'm not blinking, man. I'm like revved up on just endogenous dopamine. This is my default state. And why? What was I talking? Why was I talking about?
Well, they don't know that you're practicing stand up 6 nights a week and like are religious about your workouts. Like, they don't see that side of you. They just
right. What was the thing? And we were talking about this because because I don't like the like having that be the context. And I don't know if there's another art form that's like, maybe speaking's like, oh my God, probably definitely being like, I'm a speaking coach. Like that sets this tone for an expectation for how that conversation will go.
Right.
I hate all of that, dude. I hate it so much. If I could go without ever having that impact the context of a conversation that I'm having, I would vastly prefer that. I don't like it.
Do you think speaking or being funny and just sense of humor, do you think it's a mindset? Do you think that it's like a state of being that, like, if you're in it, everything comes out of your mouth kind of has that flavor versus like it is a tool or a skill?
Oh, interesting. I am partial to viewing kind of everything as like a tool and a skill. I experience the former thing you described from time to time, but I believe that's only because of the latter. And I think it feels cooler to think about stuff in this more like kind of woo-woo, like flow statey type way. But practically, it's not ever what I do for myself or like tell other people to focus on, because it can, when people would tell me to focus on that when I was new at stuff, it was really frustrating because I didn't know what to do. So I try to break the thing down that I want to do as actionably and concretely as possible and fixate on that. And if the other like really cool part shows up, man, that's awesome.
So help me break it down for people listening, especially I think in the world of improv, because my sense is that people want to feel more expressed at work and even with like social situations. They want to feel more like themselves. And I suspect that sense of humor is like a part of everybody's identity in some way, but it's not being expressed. So how can people start improving in that area? How can they express more of their humor in scenarios where they don't really even know what to do or where to start?
For me, the thing that's helped the most is literally just consuming the highest quality comedy content available online every day. Like how I start my day is I'll listen to top tier comedy podcast or stand up every day. That's what I do. And it's fun too. Like, I don't just do that because I think it's like this discipline. It's really cool. Yeah. But that's like, you'll start figuring out which comedians like feel like there's a part of them that matches like a part of you, right? Like I like a lot of comedians, but the ones that I come to over and over, I come to because I see a part of me in them, and that I can take that. And I'm not even talking consciously. Like if you just have that playing in your headphones as you start the day, like there's this phenomenon where I've noticed where if you go to a comedy show, live comedy show, stand-up comedy show, after the show, look around as people walk out. Look around. Look at how many jokes people are making. Look at how everybody adopts a specific cadence. They all have a cadence, and they're all cracking jokes, and it's beautiful, and it's really cool. And it's just their mirror neurons just firing out. They're in that like something's happening, and the bummer is that happens like once every few months for them. So they get that input. But like people don't watch stand up that often. That's okay though. But if you really want, like, it's cool too, because you can pretty quickly differentiate yourself by consuming stand up every day. You'll automatically start doing that every day unconsciously. Just a cadence, a rhythm. You'll develop your own. You'll take parts of people you like, and it'll inevitably become tinged with whatever just is the way you talk. And that's the first place that I would start.
So it's kind of like
you don't even know what you're going to shoot for unless you have like the people you like hold.
Right. So you're saying like feed your brain with inspiration with and subconsciously you'll start to kind of like absorb that energy that then what?
Then do it. Then do some form of it depends what your goals are, right? I think an improv class is a great place to start. I think if you want to get funnier, and you really want to start at a level that would make you feel you want to build up wins. And I think that's why part of the reason why I would, even if I wanted to do comedy, I would start at something like Ultraspeaking, because if I'm funny in that context, I'm feeling wins already, because most people don't go in thinking like, this is how I'm going to be funny. So the context, again, there's no expectation for humor.
Yeah, I think it's hard to test your humor out in scenarios where you've spent a lot of time with the people, where the people already know you well, because you kind of feel like, I'm going to try on this new identity that you haven't seen before. But you've seen me for hundreds of reps where I'm not that person. So the fear is you're going to judge me harshly because I'm trying to be something that you've never seen before.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's why it's cool to join like a cohort or an improv class, or just go to an open mic. Yeah, I think that stuff's great. Yeah, because people don't have that context for who you are.
So if we kind of follow this train of thought and are sort of creating a formula. So you want to become funnier. Step one, start absorbing content that makes you laugh, that seeds your brain. Eventually, it will start to infect and affect the way that you operate. Maybe step two is to join something that's outside of your regular interactions. So you have like a space to practice, whether it's through speaking or through improv or through open mic.
Right. Yeah, I'll tack on a step zero that might be useful that I did as well, which is I wanted like a set of tools to be able to, when I'm listening and consuming this high quality comedy content, to understand why it's working. Like when you hear it, it's still helpful to hear it because you'll subconsciously be able to just internalize some of it and use it. But for me, it was way more useful to understand why a joke worked. And then when I heard a joke that worked particularly well, I would reverse engineer it in my brain or on paper to know exactly why it worked. Because then I would have this abstraction that I could then map onto things that I thought were funny. I would have this abstract joke structure that is devoid of like so I'm not actually like taking or stealing a joke from somebody else. I would have this abstraction that I could map onto my own experience, and that's useful to me, because most people don't know why, especially if you're funny like innately, or not innately. I don't actually think it's innate, but like from a young age, maybe like you were just around it and you internalized it. You just are that. Like people are funny on accident all the time, but I don't think they know how to replicate it. So what was helpful for me, like songs, like all jokes have a structure, and to demystify that, it was really helpful for me.
What's the general structure of a joke as an example? What's like a classic one or one that you've deconstructed?
Right. Well, so the fundamental elements are, so everybody knows setup and punchline, but the thing, I think most people know this too, it's like the setup, the function of the setup is to create some kind of expectation. And then what you want to do is shatter that expectation.
Yeah, I like
and that's
that.
what a punchline is, right? So that's the fundamental mechanism behind like what every laughing moment is. Yeah. Like I'll just map this onto something to ground it. Let me think of a joke. Oh, here, Anthony Jeselnik joke. You like him, right? I think you said.
He takes this to an extreme where you think he's going one way.
Exactly. That's why he's really useful to dissect, because they're like these really isolated instances of like really high quality joke structure. So he has a joke where he says, I've spent the last 2 years looking for my ex-girlfriend's killer, but nobody will do it. Right. So that's a good joke, right? I like that joke. Good joke structure. Because in the setup, you're like, this guy is trying to avenge his dead girlfriend. Right. He loves her and he wants to avenge her. And then you find on the punchline, the whole thing is flipped. The whole narrative is 100% flipped. You're not even just learning something new and being surprised. You learn that your whole worldview is is diametrically wrong.
Yeah.
So he doesn't. Not only does he not love her, he wants to kill her, and she's not dead. She's actually alive. So you learn everything you thought you knew was completely wrong, opposite wrong. So you learn those new things at the end.
Yeah, and that's part of the humor is you're almost laughing at yourself and how quickly your mind assumed all these things that necessarily weren't forced by the sentence. There are other ways to interpret the sentence.
Correct.
Once you have context.
Right. And it's so funny watching like smart people listen to jokes because they'll try to laugh fast. Look at how quickly my mind like got it,
Interesting. Huh. I'm curious about, we're talking a lot about like joke structure and building the skill of being funny. And I have this other suspicion that everyone is naturally funny in a particular context, whether it's with their family, they grew up cracking jokes, or with their best friend. Like, I don't want to talk in absolutes, but I dare to say that most people have a sense of humor and have experienced being funny. And so one of my desires kind of at Ultraspeaking is to always like shortcut the path. And instead of learning something new, just like do the thing you already know how to do, but it's hard. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. Like, do you agree that everyone has this kind of like inner sense of humor that already is there? And if so, how can people start to sculpt it out of them?
Yeah. I really wish that had been my experience, that I was just kind of, I had this latent sense of humor that I'm unearthing, and that there could be some trigger to like really just get it to be showcased, but it was there all along. That reflects 0% of my personal experience. 0. Yeah.
Well,
zero.
if I can go into your personal life for a second, I saw a video of you on The Cut. It's a video called "Drinking with My Parents," something like that. Sure. Yeah, and your dad is really funny. Your dad.
I learned that watching that video, dude. Me and my dad don't talk that much, so like that was really cool. I was so actually. I want to like that's really cool that you said that. I want to hear more about your perception of that. Well,
first of all, your dad is he's just funny. He's what I call having a mindset of humor, where I think he was in the mindset of like, I'm going to find opportunities to add lightness or add levity. And I remember laughing when he would like jump in and
me too.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm wondering is like, did that have any influence on you growing up? Did you absorb any of that?
Possibly. I really didn't spend that much time talking to my dad growing up. He's just a really quiet dude. So when I watched that video, after that video, I walked outside and I dropped down to my knees and I cried because that was the closest that was the most conversation. Like I think the most they've heard about me in my whole life. I'm 30, dude. Like, and people watch that like, oh, that's cool. Those people get along. Like good kid, good parents. I've never told them anything about my life and I know nothing about their lives. Truly. It's really strange. I thought this was the norm. I don't want to unpack that right now. That's not that useful, but like, that's the context for that. So I know now because I'm starting to like, despite how uncomfortable it is, I'm trying to dig. I want to know about my family more. And I want them to know about me. So I'm asking them stuff and I'm learning some crazy stuff. So like my dad, I think values humor. He has a twin brother, never knew him, who was like a starving artist type. And he was always like calling into like radio shows and trying to be funny and stuff. So like so there's something there, but I don't have any experience in my personal life where I'm like, I can remember looking back in high school and being like, yo, I made people laugh here. I was only socially anxious. I only did not have people who liked me. And then I made this shift to try to change all of that. And that's only when I saw that stuff happening. So yeah, it just really wasn't my experience to be like, I'm getting back to my roots here.
So then you're leading an improv cohort and you have students just like you come in. They were socially anxious in high school. They don't feel like they are particularly funny. No one's really reflected that quality back to them.
Right.
And they decided, you know what, I'm going to make a change. And I'm going to take an improv class by Jesse. What's your formula for them? What's your approach in tackling a student like that?
It's the only thing I know how to do and what worked for me. It's by taking an engineering perspective on comedy and really trying to ruin humor for them by showing them like every single like I want them to be like a jaded magician. You know, like when like you watch a magic show as a magician, I imagine you're like this fucking guy. You know, I see what's happening there. That's what I want the level of like scrutiny to for a student to have when interpreting jokes.
Huh. Okay, so you're basically getting people to be aware of what they are doing as they're doing it.
Yeah. That's what's useful for me. So I would first apologies. Somebody walked in the room and I told them to isolate this room. For my team's here in San Francisco for some shows, but they should not be here. So what was useful for me is because there's no like core thing in me that I'm trying to like just get out of my own way and let loose. Rather, I'm assuming I'm starting from nothing. Okay, how can I start with the very basic building blocks and then try to build something here?
What do you think is like a common mistake? Because when people try to be funny, I think they put extra effort in the wrong place.
Yeah, agreed.
What do you notice like is the mistake, and where do you tend to correct it?
I think trying to be really jokey in improv is just like a response to anxiety, right? So like you're like pretty tense and you're trying to be jokey to alleviate some of that tension because you feel like you need to be funny, or you need to feel like you are funny like every so often. So that's why I think starting with something like Ultraspeaking is great, because when I do improv now, I don't think about jokes. I think like what I'm fixated on when I get into that scene is like the base reality, what is true, what is an interesting real life thing to explore. And I trust that the rest of it will come out and be funny eventually. But that's only because I've done the separate work of like developing a conscious competence of joke structure and the work I've done there. So the hope is that I've done enough of that some of it has moved from conscious competence to unconscious competence, so that when I'm focusing on these more grounded elements, it just comes through.
It's so interesting to me because your approach is so engineering heavy, and it's very much your own. So I respect it greatly. And what I like about it is that it basically says you can have nothing. You could be the worst in this area, but there's a science to it. And if you just start studying the science of it and you put in the reps, then your subconscious will start to absorb it and you'll know what to do in the moment.
Yeah, it's not a particularly sexy approach, but I believe it's one of the most optimistic things you can like. I'm so grateful of that. That's like the truth of it. That I really believe that this is the truth. So, and if it's the truth, then what a magnificent world we live in, because it's universally accessible.
It's so anti what I believe.
I know. And I thought about this going into this conversation, and I was like, okay, how much give do I have here? And I love, dude. Oh, go ahead.
It's not even anti in the sense of I believe you're wrong. It's that my reality has been the opposite.
Yes,
it's
right.
about like my dad's a funny dude. Like he's the Mr. Bean character in my life, where he's just like he knows how to make me laugh, and
Cool.
he kind of has a sense of humor, and I grew up with it, and I grew up testing it with friends.
Nice.
and getting that response.
Right.
I could make my friends laugh, but I couldn't make groups laugh, and I couldn't do that in the workplace. But I had the centerpiece, and then as I've grown more confident in other environments, I've only seen that centerpiece grow in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that's the experience of most stand-up comics, right? It's the challenge is to transpose making their friends laugh to making general audience laugh, because that's not a one-to-one relationship. But that's the skill. They're learning how to move it over and generalize it to a contextless environment, because with friends, you have a shared context. With a group of strangers, you have none. So how do you create that context so that you can recreate that context so that you can thrive? Completely opposite experience for me. I didn't make my friends laugh. I started doing stand-up. All my friends said, "Why would you do stand-up? You're like painfully unfunny." And I say, well, I'm going to learn it so that I can apply it in real life. And that's what I've done over time.
Wow. The yin and the yang approaches to comedy.
I think that's cool. I'm glad that there's multiple approaches to this. Yeah. And right. So some people will resonate more with your experience, because like if you really have something to start with, maybe you don't want to start at ground zero. Although I think it's useful for everybody to, get to the basics of like the foundational mechanisms of anything really that they're trying to learn. I think it can only help.
Yeah. I mean, I think exactly like it helps being good at something and knowing why you're good at it and being able to break it down.
It's so fun too. I hope it's fun for other people, because it's really like been the biggest joy, like the epiphany moment, like my biggest joys in life have been like these moments where I make some connection where I'm like, that's how that works. And often it's some problem I've been ruminating on for a long time, or not even like consciously ruminating on, but like it'll just click because I'm just doing it every day. When you do something every day, it's so fun to see things click.
Yeah, that's the secret, isn't it? Just keep putting yourself out there. And I think it's important to also experience the feeling of having your humor not land and being able to like be okay in that scenario, or at least build up a tougher skin of it's not as bad as you fear.
It's pretty bad, man. It's really bad. It's really bad. But what's cool about getting good at like if you see a really experienced comedian, they're still trying new stuff. So there are jokes that don't land, but do they really ever bomb? Like that's a different question, right? Because like when you're really skilled, you basically get really good at addressing everything that's happening. And when you address it, like when you bomb, there's this tension when the joke doesn't land. But by addressing it, you alleviate the tension. There's a laugh just through that. So like when you see really experienced comics do stuff that bombs, they don't really bomb.
What about in the workplace? Because that's really what I was envisioning. Like less being in front of an audience, but more like being at ease, being funny in front of your boss or your team members or like people you don't even know who work there with you.
Yeah, that's why I started. That's why I took my first improv class. I wanted to I had to give like presentations, like a fucking AI startup, and it made me nervous because I thought everybody was really smart, way smarter than me. So I wanted to like have some way to feel comfortable. And I think it's like putting yourself in like a more stressful situation that's similar to the thing you're trying to become more comfortable in is the best way to get comfortable in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Make stretch your worst case scenario.
Yeah, I think that this is quite common actually in like the tech industry. Like there are like, because people are so like biohackery that like a lot of these tech guys are like trying stand up or improv, and they're with no real innate ability. And I think it's really admirable because what they're trying to do is put themselves in these deeply uncomfortable scenarios so that when they come back to regular life, they're more comfortable.
Mm. Tell me how you got into this, how you bridged the two worlds and created this touring show where you effectively create roasts for people in tech.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, so I co-founded a company called Socially Inept, and it's a tech roast show. So there's four of us, and what we do is we go to different tech cities. We're in San Francisco right now. We have a show tonight, tomorrow, and the next night. The next week we're going to New York, do a couple shows, big tech city. And we roast people who are essentially acting as avatars for that tech scene, and then we also do a lot of interactive roasts with like people in the audience, just talking to them. What company do you work for? And all the performers in my company, they're ex techies, ex engineers. So we all have this shared knowledge, and I think that's completely essential here. And it's the unique value prop for this service that we're offering.
So you get it. You get the quirks and kind of you've been on the inside. And so how do people respond to like essentially getting made fun of or
favorably? If you're not an idiot, you know it's love. Like if you're not that's quite harsh, but like if you're, it's so to me clear that this is like a love and celebration of something. That's why like when you see a celebrity roast of this person, it's not like these people hate that person. This should be intuitive. I hope that this becomes intuitive. It isn't always intuitive, but when people like are like, "Whoa, that's like negative. Who would want to get roasted?" It's like, I would, dude. I would love it. Throw me into any scenario that's like that. And it's cool that it's not for everybody. I don't think that that's wrong, but to interpret our intent as like to tear something down it's just incorrect.
Have you ever had to apologize for a joke?
I don't think so. No. Yeah, no. We talk a lot about where that line is, and I think we tend to err on the side of, but it's like if you watch like roast battles where it's just stand-up comics roasting each other, they get really, really on PC, and that's just like not where our audience is or where our particular brand of humor lies. So we do some jokes that are very roasty. It's just like that's not where my brain goes. It never has been. When I've been writing stand up, I was never a particularly like offensive. Like I'm gonna make some kind of like edgy statement. It's just not what my brain wants to do. I don't think it's. I think it's funny when other people do it well, but it's not my style.
Yeah. I think intent matters a lot, and it's kind of my compass around if I ever cross the line, that I trust in my intent enough that it's not coming from a mean place. It's coming from like I just want to be funny or I want to make you laugh place.
Sure.
To where I can apologize for it. I can go back to the intent and say, hey, I messed up, but please know it came from this place.
Oh, totally. And when you're speaking of that, like the times when I've had to do that is with my company, with my friends, like not to an audience, but like like with your friends, you really feel comfortable. Like like all my guards are down. I'll really say whatever I want. So in those contexts, I've definitely been like, oh, dude, my bad, man. I had no idea that was like the thing that that would affect you that way. Definitely not my intent. I was, I think I was just caught up in the momentum. I was trying to make a joke. Yeah, sorry. Like I've done that a number of times.
How would you recap this episode in a in like a advicey kind of way? And I hate to put you in that position, but what's kind of your billboard message almost around you know, not around the people who dream of being professional stand-up comedians or starting their own tech roasting company, but more around like the Ultraspeaking audience, for whom I think the most important thing is around self-expression and this feeling of less anxiety, more ease, more comfort. Like, what's kind of the billboard message that you have for them?
Well, one is that it should be abundantly clear that humor is learnable. Like funny is a learnable skill. It's a skill. It's a craft, just like anything else. It's no different from music, where you can become better at music. So if you're of the opinion, which I'm continuously surprised with just how many people still believe this, but it makes sense. I think that there's pervasive prevailing belief that like you're either funny or you're not. I don't know why this exists for comedy and not other skills. Like, it's not like you're either a dancer or you're not a dancer.
Right.
I guess sometimes the dancer one is like, some people are like, you have no rhythm. Well, okay, well, fucking learn it then. Practice it.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's like pretty foundational. I don't know. I don't really have that much advice. The only things that I try to do are like live in such a way where like a younger, like 19-year-old lost version of me, like would do those things and sooner, because I would have found him already, but I wish I had known some stuff sooner. Cause a lot of everything that I tend to consume content wise, most of it is around this realm of like rediscovering some like childhood element of yourself, some childhood passion, some childhood talent, or like some, rather than like building from nothing. And I spent a decade lost and frustrated because I was listening to all this like, well, what was my passion, or like, what is the thing I'm trying to reconnect with? Because all I did growing up, was play video games and nothing, and not talk to people. Like really, I truly believe like I did not have like a starting point. There was nothing for me to try to reconnect with, and that was so frustrating because I felt like everybody had this thing, and then I didn't, and that I was just broken because of it. So if there's somebody who feels like they don't have that thing, like really don't have that, it's not futile, because you can start somewhere. And one of the best places to start, like I know that no skills are superior. There's no objectively superior skill to something else. Like baseball is not superior to bass guitar, or vice versa. But I do think that if you don't know what to do, optimizing for second order effects is a good place to start. And by doing something like stand up or improv, the second order effects of doing these are way better than the second order effects of doing yo-yo or anything else. Because what is stand up? Stand up is not like you do stand up, you get better at stand up. You do stand up, you get better at a set of micro skills: humor, charisma, confidence, charm, likability. And if you take that set of micro skills, you'll find that those set of micro skills exist in almost any pursuit that you could find yourself in. So when in doubt, I would optimize for breadth of application of the second order effects of the skill that you're pursuing. So if that's the case, well, for me, stand up or improv was very helpful. Some foundational health habit is like so obvious to me. It's like do some kind of exercise. The second order effects of that, it cannot be understated. Yeah.
I love it. Super inspiring to A, know that it can be learnable, B, know that it's super valuable, and C, to take that approach beyond being funny and that skill, but also being healthy and kind of the foundational skills that have big payoffs.
Yeah. I think that there are some things that have a bigger payoff than other things, but that's just been my personal experience. Because I used to like play fucking like poker, like and that was like a useful. That was fun and useful, but like when I got done with it, I didn't really apply that skill that many
Right.
different places.
Right. Yeah. I think Scott Young calls them meta skills in ultra learning. Meta skills that have like, extraordinary side impacts on the rest of your life.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
Kind of like speaking, maybe like writing.
Yeah. Right.
You know, nutrition, things like
knowledge
that.
management. I think that's like a big gift.
Right.
Like that's so
Shut
foundational
up.
for me. If you don't know what to do, like fucking create an operating system for your life. Start
Right.
there. Everything else will kind of fall into place.
Right. I got to ask you one last question. You and I had lunch once.
We did.
And yeah, we did.
Santa Monica.
You came in a tank top. You were super ripped.
Santa Monica, dude.
I know.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
It is what you're supposed to do. You were super ripped. You got all the muscles. I do want to talk to you about calisthenics a little bit, but I don't know if this is the place. But
yeah, how boring is that to most?
No, it's actually like what I'm learning in just getting stronger and spending more time doing exercise. Even the like repetitive ones is that, there are second order effects around movement, and there's suddenly it becomes like there's a flow to it too. It becomes its own sort of anyway. What I wanted to ask you was we were having lunch. You were in your tank top, and I asked you because you're an improv teacher and whatnot, if you were any good on first dates.
Oh,
and
right.
The thing you said to me was, Michael, I know nobody better.
Oh, dude, I said something along that lines, and you laughed a lot, which was my desired outcome. I was trying to make you laugh. So I think I said something along the lines of, yeah, man, I can't really imagine that there'd be somebody who's better at it than I am. Mildly tongue-in-cheek. It sounds so obnoxious.
But hey,
I don't mean it, by the way. I like. There's some kernel of truth. Like I believe that like I like have a good time on first dates, but to justify like that type of absurd statement, like truly, like what kind of freak would say something like this? I'm experimenting with, and I've always found it. Not always found, but since I've been doing comedy, found this to be the case. I think like absurd, cartoonish levels of arrogance is like such a interesting realm of humor to explore. I don't see it that often. You mostly see self-deprecating. So it's such an interest. It's literally like a fascinating like curiosity to me, like both consuming comedians who do exhibit this tendency to utilize cartoonish arrogance as like a comedic device, and then to try to weave it into my own life. And it's a dangerous one too, because talk about like having humor be misinterpreted. Dude, I've had scenarios where I've said some cartoonishly arrogant stuff to have the other person be like, who would say some shit? Like,
I saw your intro once on YouTube of like, welcome to the world's greatest, comedy show in the tech scene. I'm the world's greatest comedian, Jesse Warren.
But even that was a self-deprecating joke, because so that joke was, I was hosting the 2019 GeekWire award show, which is a tech company award show, and I said something along the lines of, welcome to the GeekWire 2019 award show, the most prestigious tech award show in the country. And I'm Jesse Warren, the best comedian in the world. Right. So like, that's ironic, right? I'm saying I'm not good because TechCrunch is like, whatever, like GeekWire is second tier common knowledge, I think. Shout out. I mean to badmouth them. They're great. They're like great publications.
Edit this part out. We'll send them a re-upped version where you say they're the.
I think they're fantastic. But that, even the subtext there, it's not particularly arrogant. Actually, I view that as a self-deprecating joke. But like when you say something where it's ambiguous, whether or not the person who's saying it actually believes they're the shit, but for it to be funny to me, maximally funny, you have to not know whether or not they're serious. So like people say. When I talk about this, people are like, well, Jesselnick does that. Well, I know he's joking. Like, it's like, I know that's like a character to me. It's so obviously a character. It's so, and I still think it's funny, but it's way more funny to me when you don't know. It's so funny, man.
Yeah.
That's just my personal.
And
I know it doesn't resonate with everybody. So that's all. all the context around that particular moment at that kava while we were eating shish kebab. And
so the reason I brought it up was not to put you on the spot on your arrogance. It was to dig into that kernel of truth, because I think there's a kernel of truth there around you enjoy first dates, and probably what you've learned from your investments in improv and stand-up and everything have helped you in that, just being in more engaging on dates. So for people who are dating, who go on first dates, like, what's something that you think works for you, or what's kind of the secret?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I spent so much time thinking about improv and stand-up and jokes and stuff, it really does shape like how I filter everything in the world. So it inevitably is going to impact how I date. I think a particularly illustrative recent example is I was just on a cut video that hasn't come out yet. It's like 2 weeks ago, and it's a dating show. It's called The Button. Quite a popular series. Each one gets millions of views, and I've watched it. And it's very stressful to watch because the premise is that two people sit across from each other at a table, and there's a button in between them. And when that button lights up red, and the two people are on a speed date, but when that button lights up red, whoever hits it first can eliminate the other person. So if you don't like it, you hit it, and you get a new date. You get a new person to talk to. But if it's going well, you can opt not to hit the button. And if both people opt not to hit the button and don't hit the button for 10 minutes, you win an all expenses paid second date. So there's incentive to not hit the button. Yeah. However, if you watch any of the episodes, everybody just leaps on that. They fucking leap on it. They want to protect themselves. It's survival instinct. And if you watch past episodes, what you'll notice is that people, you see what people say. I love like dating shows. I think because you get to see something that it feels like you're not supposed to see.
Yeah.
How people are.
I can't do it. I
love it.
I can't. It's too cringy for me because I'm like, I shouldn't be. It's so vulnerable that I'm not, because I can see the insecurities and the anxieties and like, can't bear it.
Love it. So what I saw was like, okay, yeah, people, like, where are you from? Where do you work? What do you do? Right? Standard. Like there's nothing wrong with that stuff. But because that is standard, well, not because that is standard. All I know is that that's how most people handled that. I watched the episodes before I went into it. That's not, and what's interesting is to me is that's not how by default I talk on first dates. So I went into this, I was going to, treat these like first dates that I normally treat first dates like. So I don't come in with like these questions. And then one step above that, so some people will use those standardized questions. And then some people will like walk in with a pre-planned, like different question, would you rather, keg stand a fucking, bottle of kombucha or get 5 of your mother's fingers chopped off? And they'll be like, dude, this is like something they've never heard before, And then they'll be like, dude, I got this one in the back pocket. Like you'll see their face light up. They're like, this is a good ass question. But you can still tell, and I think it might be good. But to me, I'm like, that's so clearly preconceived. And when I get a question like that, I'm like, how many people has this guy asked this to? It's like, so that's my first reaction. I don't know if other people think that, but I knew I was going to go into it without any questions, but you got to talk, you got to have some questions. So you got to have something to talk about, but I just trusted that I will have something particularly pertinent to that context. So the first time I walked in, there's 10 guys and 10 girls all in separate rooms. And then one by one, you come in when it's your time. And I came in and I remember, I think I asked, there's in the guy room, there's a bowl of treats, all manner of different treats, because there's 10 people and they want to be accommodating. What treat did you choose in your bowl?
Yeah.
And, I forgot what she said, but there were, salty treats, sweet treats, all different kinds. And I think it's quite telling, what treat you like before this anxiety inducing dating show. And now you're navigating this new space that's very relevant and clearly isolated to only this context. And now I'm talking about why I chose cashews, dude, because they're inexpensive. Like they're good if they're next to Doritos. Like it's like a pretty clear value prop. Like that's a more expensive snack. I'm trying to maximize my value here, and I ate cashews, and it's healthy. I felt good. I don't remember exactly what I said, but like we got into this pretty heated, but in a good, fun, playful way,
of course,
dialogue about this thing that truly does not matter. But I get more out of how somebody talks about something than like what they're talking about. So yeah, I might not have walked away knowing what this person does for a living, but how they talk about their preferred snacking options tells me way more about what I'm curious about.
Totally. How much are they willing to engage in play and be in just kind of like a pretend world with you?
It's fun. That's what's fun for me. Yeah. So to me that, I won the dating show, by the way.
Oh, come on. That's amazing.
So
see,
I don't know.
It is. I don't know nobody better.
I mean, other people have won before too, but I did feel, I felt comfortable in that really uncomfortable context. And I think, because after I won, I talked to the person who, you both don't touch, so we, hung out afterwards. And she told me how she felt comfortable talking to me, and it was a very uncomfortable context. And I think, it's not a job interview, right? Like there's something stressful about having to talk about, and most people don't live for their work. And yet that's the thing, like the thing I try to do on an extended, like less speed datey type scenario after, I start to feel comfortable is I try to figure out what this person cares about the most in life. Because one of the biggest joys I have, like what I truly love doing, is listening to somebody who cares about something talk about it. I actually don't know if there's something more I like than that. So if I can figure out what that is and then just pry, I love that. But what's cool is that turns out humans love that, right? I love talking about what we're talking about right now. You've elicited the thing that I care most about in my life, and I could talk about it forever, and I would like to. So I like seeing that in other people. So that's kind of naturally just what I've taken to doing on first dates, is trying to figure out what that is. And seldom is it what they're currently doing at their job.
Interesting. And that can start with your relationship to peanuts versus Cheez-Its. And it can build towards something more meaningful. But what I notice in you is that your starting place is not pre-contrived in hypotheticals. It seems to be like you use the tension that you feel, you use in the present moment of what you both experience, and you try to like start somewhere real.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, the first thing that I said, because she goes, "How are you?" Which is a fine way to start. But I think a normal person would have said good. But I think I said like, my heart rate is unusually high right now.
I love that.
And I'm navigating a very like uncomfortable feeling, and I think I'll get out of this when we start talking. I have a good feling right now. Yeah, there's something along those lines. I just turned my attention inward, and I just said what was happening. And I just trusted that will kind of work itself out.
I love that. That's very real. That's very like real and present are kind of the themes that I'm getting from you, which I really like.
Yeah, that helps. But all of that is only possible because I did the really labor intensive like prep work that allows me to be this when I'm here.
The improv reps, the stand-up reps,
like if I were you, dude, I would be writing way more raps because you're an excellent freestyler. But why aren't you writing as much, right? Because like that to me, you got to attack from both angles. But what you're doing clearly works. So I just again, different experiences. Like that would never work for me. If I only did improv, it really wouldn't look that pretty.
It's true that my freestyles improve based on writing, because you just absorb the things you're writing, and then subconsciously it'll come out in new ways.
And that's why I'm excited. Like I've been trying to do more long form, just writing out my thoughts, because I've noticed as I've been doing that, I've been moving from conscious competence of some pretty complex rhetorical structures that have just been bleeding into my speaking. And when I have something, like I'll hear myself, because I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say next, but I'll see it come out of my mouth and I'll go, whoa, dude, that was exactly in the structure of an antithesis statement, or like a diacope like all these rhetorical devices that have like this very specific form. And everything has a form, right? Like in rap, whatever the rap versions of that are, and in jokes, whatever the joke version of that is. But like I've seen it in rhetoric happen, and I get excited when I see that happen.
Nice. So you're the type of guy to go on a date, be super in the moment, be completely spontaneous, and then you're also the type of guy to like look at the game footage after the date and review the structure of what worked and try and see if you can find
it's fun.
patterns.
It's fun for me. Yeah, it's super fun. I love watching stuff like that. Yeah. I like improving. I think it's fun.
Kate is asking, when is the second date?
When I am back in Seattle. So I think I flew out the day after that shoot was done, so we couldn't do it. But I think in a couple weeks it'll be, and I think I'll plan something experiential. I like experiential dates.
Oh, you're planning it. It's not pre-planned it's all expenses paid, right?
Yeah, I think they just, we just foot them the bill,
So go to Europe. Take a week.
Pretty sure there's a cap, but yeah, looking forward to it. I think it'll be cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that video, because it's they never cut it the way that like you would expect them to.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I don't know. I may come off terribly. Like I'm saying all this stuff like, fuck yeah, I'm awesome. But like when the footage comes out, it'd be like, whoa, what is wrong with that guy,
reality TV has a way of just bringing out the extremes in people.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing that, man. I love stuff like that where you get to see people. I was thinking about this because one of the things you said you were gonna potentially talk about is like authenticity, and I actually have no like useful insights on it, but I do know that it's the thing that I care the most about seeing, because my content consumption habits, what I unconsciously gravitate towards, is very strange. It's like I would think that I would gravitate towards stand-up, but I would way rather watch my favorite stand-ups in a podcast, like an unscripted podcast. But even more than that, I would way rather see that person on the street in life, not know that they're being recorded. So and the reason why I'm preferring one piece of content to the other is because those later pieces of content are closer to an authentic interpretation of who they are. To me, that's what I see. So, so my ideal piece of content is my favorite comedian in a compilation of their funniest moments where they don't know they're being recorded.
Wow, that's a new show coming to me live. I don't know how you get that happen, but maybe in the age of like everyone recording everything, it's going to be.
I think YouTube is like YouTube has some. It's like a lot of times instead of podcasts, I'll listen like to podcasts I like that I can't keep up with their like bi-weekly cadence, or like whatever twice a week is. But so like there'll be people who are like best of this podcast for the month of March, and I'll be like, great, like these clips will give me in 30 minutes them authentic and the funniest moments of them. So like that stuff I like, and I imagine because they're so popular that there'll be some new variation of that too.
Well, I'm gonna chop this up into clips right after we finish. Paste your face on the thumbnail, and maybe we'll get one photo with you shirtless just to like get a few more clicks.
It is something to marvel at. Yeah, it is quite astonishing what I managed to do with my physique. Yeah.
So anything for a like and a subscribe is our motto.
Is that the Ultraspeaking?
Well, hasn't worked yet, but we're getting there. Jesse, could talk to you for longer, but I won't. I'm going to cut it here.
Cool.
It's been a real pleasure, and I learned a lot, and hopefully people picked up really the reverse engineering side of comedy, because I love how you say it's a skill, and I believe that very much. So thanks for your time. Thanks for being here.
Good talking, man. Always a pleasure.
I'll see you next time.